Hi, this is Country Carrie. I'm in my kitchen this morning cooking, and I decided that I would show you how to make apple pie. So it doesn't have to be Thanksgiving to have pie. A lot of us think of pie as the holidays. Pie at our house is all year long. And actually with the pie, I also do pie as gifts. I'll go to my dollar store, buy tins that I don't care if they're returned or not. And today I'm going to actually be making a sympathy pie because one of my neighbors passed away, and I want to make it for her son. And anyway, so a lot of different reasons why you can make pie. It doesn't have to be a holiday. What I like to do is I like to use my old Betty Crocker cookbook, but I modify the recipes. Now I realize that cookbook's old, and so I modify it for more healthier eating. I want to show you that I am a pie maker. So a couple years ago, I entered my apple pie, that I'm going to show you how to make now, to our county fair. And I not only got a grand champion, I got a best of show. And so I thought I'd tell you that. And then I thought, oh, I better dig out the photo so I can prove it, so you're not just thinking I'm full of air. Anyway, so the first thing that you do when you make pie is, what I do is I get out my fresh ground wheat flour. Now, you can grind it fresh that day, or I'll grind some fresh and I'll put it in a container and I'll freeze it. And then when I'm ready to use it, I'll pull it out. The ground flour that we're going to use today, the wheat flour, is actually already pre-measured because we did the Little Red Hen in my school class, and I wanted to show them what ground flour was. Because we took the wheat, you know the story about the Little Red Hen finding the wheat seeds. So anyway, so we're gonna add it calls for two cups of flour. You can either add the whole 2 cups of flour, fresh ground wheat flour, or if your family's not used to using wheat flour, you can use half white and half wheat. So just to show you, I think that's what I'll do this time. So I'll use 1 cup wheat flour, 1 cup white flour. And I'll mix them together. And of course, the wheat flour is my addition to making this healthier. Then it calls for a teaspoon of salt. Now, what I do is I make it a scant teaspoon. You still want the salt for flavoring, but you don't want all that sodium. If I can get my salt container opened. There we go. And it's just a scant teaspoon of salt. Now it says to use 2/3 cup shortening. So what I do is, to try to make it a little healthier, is I try not to use all that shortening. I actually get my butter dish and I'll add quite a bit of butter in it. Probably about half of this container full of butter. Because I realize butter is healthier than Crisco, but I also realize that there is a science to cooking, and you need to make sure that you add the ingredients that you need for that chemical reaction, that science part of cooking, to take place. Oh, I should have showed you how much. Let me just pull that out. So I added this much butter, quite a bit. It's about half of that's about full. Then I'll add the rest, shortening. I talked to a nutritional specialist about making things out of, you know, like shortening. And he said, you can still make things to taste good. Just be careful about how much you eat. So that's what I do. It calls for 2/3 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And so I just kind of guess my 2 tablespoons. If you're not comfortable with doing that, you can get out your tablespoons and add that. And put it in. Now in my family, my mom taught me how to make pies, and she was a wonderful pie maker. And my grandma taught her. My dad's mom taught her, and my grandma, Ethel, said whenever we had family reunions, and they were big on family reunions, she said Miriam would make the cakes because she's the good cake maker, and I'd always bring the pies. And so I'm happy to have a tradition that's passed down from my grandma to my mom to me. And I've actually taught my daughter, my niece, some of my friends how to make pie, just so that it can be passed down, and so that they wouldn't have to refigure out how to do it to make it work. I've talked to quite a few women that don't even know how to make pie crust, and so this is one of the reasons I wanted to show you today. What they usually do is just either buy the already made pies or buy the freezer, the pie crust in the freezer area of the store. So at this point, oh, you know what? I should tell you. I just grabbed it and started using it. This is called a pastry blender, and this is what I used to make pies. When my mom did pies, all she used was a kitchen fork. So you don't even need a pastry blender. You can use a fork to make it work. I just found that because I make so many pies, when the holidays come, seems like one Thanksgiving I made 6 pies. So anyway, at this point, you can do it as much as you want, because it's not going to make your pie crust stiff and hard, tough. But what you want to do is do it enough so that the butter and the Crisco, or I could say shortening, you don't have to use that brand, is well mixed throughout the flour. Now here's where you need to be careful about handling the dough. So next you add, says 4 to 5 tablespoons of cold water. Now the cold water actually helps with the chemical reaction of making the pie. So you want to make sure it is cold. I just take mine out of the fridge, or I've done it before cold out of the tap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now this is the part where you want to touch it the least. By overworking it now, it will make a real tough pie crust, and you don't want that. So I just mix it lightly. Yes, I'm using that good old fork to mix it lightly. All right, so that it is moist. So there's many ways that you can roll out your dough. You can use a Tupperware. I had a Tupperware plastic sheet that I used at one point. I've seen cloths. I've used the counter because pie crust is really forgiving. And my mom always would use just good old wax paper. So that's what I'm going to show you with today. So what I do with this is I just fold it so that I can hold it onto the edge of the counter and it will stay. If you notice I didn't rip this piece off, it's because I had just a short piece on my old roll and I just put it on my new roll. And it's about the right size. It's a little short, but we'll make it work. Okay, so then I take half of the dough, and see, it's kind of crumbly still. It's just moist, and I put it on my wax paper. Then with my rolling pin, I just have a wooden rolling pin that I've had for years. And then you can just start, I'm gonna make this bowl so you can see. So I just put it down on the wax paper, kind of push it down a little bit to get it kind of meshing together. And then I just roll it out. And remember when I said this is very forgiving. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be perfect. One of the things that's nice about using a cloth or a wax paper or a Tupperware sheet is you can actually move it around if you wanted to. If you wanted to just roll one direction, you can move that around to get your circular form. When I do my upper crust, that's when I try to be a little bit more precise. Okay, good enough. So I'm going to take my dollar store pie tin, place it down on my pie crust. Simply flip it over. And gently pull it up. The nice thing with this wax paper is I can use one piece of wax paper for the bottom and the top. In fact, I am going to make 2 pies today. One of the things I've tried to do is when I make a treat for the neighbors, I try to make the same treat for my family. When our kids were small, I would make things for the family and not for us. And they would say to me, "Oh, Mommy, who's that for?" Because I made it a habit of doing that. And I felt bad. I thought, you know what? I want them to delight in our service to others, not feel bad, oh, Mommy's making something for somebody else and we don't get any. So now I make doubles. And I have for years now, because I figure, you know what? If the neighbors deserve one, so does my family. And it has really changed the attitude of my children. Not that sometimes doing things for others and not doing them for your family won't hurt, but it just made it hard on them because I was constantly doing that. So I just noticed I kept working and I didn't even tell you what I was doing. So I laid the crust down and then I took my fork and punctured holes in it, because as it heats, there gets air in it and you need a way for that air to vent so that you don't end up having bubbles. What I'm going to do now is just make the edges, make sure the edges are just right here at the edge. As you notice, there's places where I don't have pie crust. That's when you rob some from somewhere else. Kind of fill it in. If I had a real big piece, I'm just going to say like right here, here's a floppy piece, and I don't want all that. I can easily cut that off, stick it someplace else that needs it. The thing I've been told most about my pies is not only how tasty they are, but how flaky the crust is. And if you've ever had pie that had a real tough crust, you know that flaky crust is better. Okay. So one thing to let you know is I actually make my own pie filling. I bottle my own. That way it's more economical. I try to do it healthier. I leave the skins on. And it makes it so that I can make pies for neighbors for Christmas. I can make pies for birthdays, sympathy pies, and it doesn't cost a lot. One of the things that I make sure that I do is rotate. So if you notice, I did this batch of pie filling on 9/14/19, which was not last year, but the year before, but it's still good. So I make sure I rotate my food out before I use my new food. That way you're not wasting it. And did you hear the sound? That way you can tell that the seal was good on my canned items. And then I will just put this in here. I have this really good recipe for pie filling, and I hope to show you in the near future. Oh, it smells so good with all that fresh cinnamon and apple smell. That's All right. Okay, so there's the pie filling inside. Now we're going to do the top, and that's where it gets to be a little tricky. You can decide if you want to do a lattice or if you want to do just a plain straight pie crust. There's also these kind of toppings for pies. You can cut out your little apples and put it on. Today I want to teach you how to do the lattice pie crust because that was the same topping that I did when I received that Best of Show and Grand Champion at the fair. Okay, again, I just put it all down and I press it to kind of secure it together. Okay, now a little bit of flour. Start rolling it out. This had a little bit more flour to it, so it might go over the edge a little bit. You can also use this crust recipe for making dinner pies, like chicken pot pie. And I like to do that using my leftover chicken soup that I make. I'll just thicken it up, chicken vegetable soup. I'll just thicken it up and put it in a pie shell. And that way my family is still eating it and they don't even know. It's great. They think, oh, this is so good. And it's not like, oh, that was yesterday's chicken vegetable soup. Because I'm going to do a lattice, it won't really matter on the edges of this because I'm going to trim it down with one of my butter knives. I did have plenty of dough for my bottom crust. If I didn't, I could have taken some out of the bowl. Okay. All right, so here's my butter knife. It makes it really easy. You don't want to press hard. Rip your wax paper. If I was just doing this right on my counter, you wouldn't want to scratch your counter. And it doesn't take much to just lightly cut and move away. Now let me show you how friendly this pie crust is. See right here, there isn't any pie crust. It is so forgiving. I can just take a piece of pie crust that I just cut off, put it right there in that spot, press it down with my fingers. If I really wanted to, I could even roll it out, make it a little bit more uniform. There's a little hole right here. I'll stick. So I'm going to just trim off these edges of this crust so that you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. That way if I need a little bit of extra dough to fill in, I'll have it. Okay. So I now just have a square piece of dough. What I'm gonna do is just eye it. I guess if you were being really particular, you could use a ruler if you washed it first. But I just eye it and I just take my knife and I go down and make strips. Next on my pie, I'm just trying to clear me a spot so I can show you what I'm doing. So then I'll just gather up a piece. I could just use a knife or a spatula and make sure that it's off the wax paper. Whoop, did you see that broke? No problem. We'll just put it on and fill it in. That works better if I put it sideways. Okay, so I'm going to lay 3 strips down. If you can see that. And then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to put 3 more strips across. The tricky part is when you're finishing up these other ones, you lift up 2 pieces because you're going to start weaving. And I'll flip up the middle piece. The middle piece was the piece that was broke, but it'll be okay. And my end piece was cracking, so I took it off. So it's okay because the end parts of your pie are a little bit smaller than your very center. If I was doing this for the fair, I would, yes, take a little bit more time just to make sure it was perfect. But for here and now, it's just fine. And my family will, my family will enjoy one, but also our neighbor will enjoy it. And it will turn out wonderfully. So what I do now is these edges that I've set down, I now curl under and make part of the edge of the pie crust. I'm going to go around and pinch the edges so that they're all enclosed. If I needed a little bit more pie crust, I can grab it and just squish it in where it's a little thin. Like this so I can get to the little pieces better. Just pinch them. What you do is you pinch them like this so that they're the bottom, my thumbs are touching the bottom of the pie pan and my fingers are squishing together. Okay, now there's a piece like right here, it's fat and I don't want it there. So I'm just gonna take my kitchen shears, trim it off, go around the whole pie if there's any other spots that need to be trimmed a little bit. Now what I do to my edges is I just touch them and have them go over, crease over the top of the pie pan. That way you won't get the shrinkage from the pie cooking. Sometimes the pie crust will shrink and pull away, but this way it won't. Isn't that a beautiful pie? Now you can either cook it this way, just like this, or if I get in my cupboard, I have a little cinnamon sugar bear that I'll use, and I'll sprinkle a little cinnamon sugar on top. It's mainly cinnamon with a little bit of sugar to keep it, to help it to flow. And then that will be awesome. Before I put it in the oven, you can put either one of these rings around it to protect it from burning your edges, or you can use foil. And all you do with foil is rip a piece off. I just fold over one edge and then I'll wrap it around just the edge of the pie crust so that it will cover it. So it's easy that way. And then when it gets closer to being done, you take off the foil or the plastic covering, and it will finish browning evenly. If you do not use something for the edges of your pie crust, your pie will cook and the edges will be burnt because it's thinner. So you want to make sure you do that. Well, enjoy your day and enjoy your pie if you eat it yourself or if you give it to others. It's a good, healthy, nutritional, yummy treat, especially with a little ice cream. Have a good day. Bye-bye.